Greetings, conversationalist conservatives. And for the next couple of weeks, we hope to see you at the Republican polls because we're in the middle of a primary. Thank you for tuning in to the David Russell Show. I'm David Russell, your host. Today we have a special show because we have Jon Gimble. He's running for the Texas State House District 22 seat. Welcome to the show, Jon.
It's a little bit different. It's Texas State Senate seat 22.
I already messed it up, didn't I?
Well, sorry. The House is what Pat's going for.
Correct. And you're the higher office, the state Senate. Well, I interviewed Pat last night and it was a late night. So forgive me.
No, you're good. I just.
Okay.
All right.
Well, Jon, what I was thinking, we ought to break this interview up in three parts. First, maybe we can talk about your early life, where you was raised, what you did before you got elected as the McLennan County district clerk. Then, second part, we could cover all the improvements you made to that office. I believe, wasn't you the first Republican to hold that office, or first one in a while, if nothing else?
At least since Reconstruction, there might have been a Republican back then. So,
100 years or so.
Yeah.
Well, talk about what you did to improve that office, because that's an extremely important office and a lot of work goes on. Also, in that section, the work you did with the current state senator, District 22, Brian Birdwell, which he did a great job. We talk about what he's doing now. And your work with the Republican Party, along with the McLennan County Republican Club and our monthly luncheons. Third, the campaigns, what we're doing now, explain a little bit about the demographics of this seat, because it's kind of all over the place. What you see for this important seat, this state senate, and how you would represent it. Then I'll close, if it's okay, with the where to vote during the early voting, the times, and ask everybody to get out to vote. So let's start with that first section, which is tell me about your family has some interesting background, and tell me about some of that.
Well, there's a few fun stories back there that I've heard over the years. The Gimbles first moved to Texas right after the first 300, and my seventh grade or eighth grade uncle was in the Battle of Goliad. Unfortunately, he didn't make it through that, but the name was passed down through the family. His name was Corporal Jon Gimble, and my granddad was named after an ancestor named after him. And so I carry a little bit of that heritage with me.
Wasn't there only a few people that was at Goliad that lived?
I think so. Yeah, it was a pretty bad mess. They captured them and killed a lot of them.
Correct. So that's I love history.
That was the rallying cry at San Jacinto. Was remember Goliad, remember the Alamo.
Sure,
because they were both bad deals that were.
They took no prisoners.
That's right. Yeah. So then a lot of people in this region and, that listen to country music and Western swing, though my granddad, Johnny Gimble, he was kind of a legend in his own right. He started off as a young man, pre-teenager in the Rose City Swingsters up in Tyler. They had a radio show. And then as he grew up, went into the Army. He said he played with everybody from Glenn Miller to all the different bands that they put on the USO services. And then when he got back, he got right into what he considered the New York Yankees of music, was Bob Wills and the Texas Playboys.
Wow.
And
what history.
He did that for a while. He was a real good businessman. Bob would bring him in to kind of get his dance halls to actually make money because his relatives weren't any good at that.
True.
And then that's my dad was born in Oklahoma City because my granddad was turning around a dance hall up there. but so kind of a musical history with music business, that kind of thing. In the 50s, as Western swing was dying out, he moved to Waco.
Yes.
And opened up a barber shop with a few other musicians. And they were right across the street from the VA hospital, and they cut hair for anybody that came in. And the VA would shuffle a lot of those customers through from across the street. And
I remember
that was kind of one of his many jobs. His other fun one. I'm sorry.
I remember seeing him perform when I was a child.
Yeah, he had a band. He played gigs in the evening, and then he had a TV show in the afternoons. It was kind of like a children's entertainment show called Johnny Gimble and the Home Folks.
Wow.
And they just have fun and cut up. That was with KWTX before they got affiliated with CBS.
Yeah.
He went on the month my dad graduated from Midway High School in 1968. He packed up the two twin daughters and moved to Nashville.
Wow.
And he and Chet Atkins became good friends, and he was on just about everybody's albums up there for a decade. And then about a year after I was born, he moved back down to Texas and toured with everybody from Willie Nelson to George Strait to you name it.
Yes.
And
a little tidbit on that. My mother's 92, and we was talking about the ballot. Who am I going to vote for? And I was telling her, and she goes, "Oh, I definitely. Johnny was a good fiddle player. I'm so happy he's getting into politics." I go, "Grandson."
Yeah.
Your grandfather. I said, "I think he's passed away a few years ago."
He did about 6 months after I swore in as district clerk. He passed away at the end of May in 2015.
Well, I'm glad he got to see you with that.
Yeah.
Tell me about your father.
Okay, so Dad was a musician down in Austin and teaching private lessons, and suddenly he had a family of 4, and about that same time, he was doing pretty well, and MCC was standing up a new program in the state of Texas called commercial music, where you teach people how to be a musician, whether it's rock and roll, country. He joined that. We all moved up here to Waco in '81 and have been in the region ever since. Woodway, Crawford, Bosqueville, living around McLennan County, and really enjoy the Central Texas spirit and just the community that we have here of neighborhoods and neighborly people.
You're more from this area than any place else. Graduated.
Yeah, third generation.
Yeah.
So I went through Midway schools, kindergarten through early 10th grade. We moved out to Crawford and graduated from there.
Mm-hmm.
And then Dad realized after my youngest sister graduated from Crawford that he was driving 40 minutes across McLennan County to get to the community college.
Yes.
And they somehow having the Bush Ranch near your house made it a lot more valuable. So they sold and moved to Bosqueville. And they've been there for 20 years now and pretty happy.
Isn't that something? Now, after you got out of high school, what did you do between high school and running for district clerk?
Sure. I had a little bit of an odyssey. I was given a few full scholarships based off academics. I took one of them to UT. While I was walking to class, I got thrown across an intersection by a car.
Ooh.
The traffic light was faulty, and somehow I was the only pedestrian left in the crosswalk, and this law student threw me across the intersection and then convinced my insurance company while I was in the hospital that I was jaywalking. So after that, I came back to Waco and went through MCC a little bit more. Went to work for my uncle for a couple years in El Paso in his accounting firm, and was doing accounting and compliance work with him. Loved my uncle, loved the work, but didn't want to live in El Paso, so moved back to Waco right around the turn of the century. And I've been here of my 49 years, probably 45, 44 of them.
And that's
this is definitely home.
Yeah.
I started volunteering in my spare time with the Republican Party as a precinct chairman.
Yes.
Pretty quickly, I was making the newsletter for the county party because good volunteers are hard to come by, and I'm not the best, but I was always helpful.
Yeah.
And then pretty soon after that, I was leading the nominations committee at the county convention and going to the state conventions for the last 25 years, and was representative for our Senate district almost every cycle for the last 16 years as either nominations or resolutions or rules, some sort of service to the state for the week of the state convention to help make sure either the platform's done right, or chairman or delegates are selected right, or the rules for the party to operate are done right. And so just a way to give back to the Republican Party and try and help make it a little better. We've had pretty good success here locally starting in '06. Since then, every county-wide race slowly turned Republican. And we had one left. It was the district clerk's office. And someone turned to me and said, "You need to do it." And I resisted that urge. But ultimately, after speaking with a number of the elected officials in the courthouse, was convinced that there was a need, and little prayer and consideration, jumped into the race. And that was most of 2014 while I was finishing my bachelor's in accounting through Tarleton. If I hadn't run for office, I would have graduated with high honors, but I guess graduating with honors and winning an office is
it's pretty good, especially becoming the first Republican in over 100 years. That's incredible.
And it was funny is I'd saved up for about just timing. The Lord always has interesting timing. Sometimes it makes you laugh. Sometimes it might make you cry a little bit. But I had saved up for a number of years to go back to school and be able to afford that. I had temporarily moved back in with my parents just to be able to throw everything at that, and then got drawn into this race and was attacked for going to college, being a 37-year-old college student. So I was like, I thought we always wanted people to do better. And so
campaigns is nasty.
Just stayed positive and kept running along and talking about, the big thing that was glaring to me when I started looking at the race was the district clerk's office's budget had grown at twice the rate of the county over 10 years.
That says something.
And that tells you that that's an indicator it's pushing your property taxes higher because it's growing faster than the average of all the county offices. So I did the opposite for the next 10 years and bent the curve back down. I kept our non-employee spending flat and actually cut it to where it was lower than when I started out of the tax funds, and shifted some of it over into special revenue funds that we get from fees for operating the court system.
Sure.
Then the other thing was, over the 10 years, I helped with Senator Birdwell and Doc Anderson. We got a district court and a county court created. And we also had a CPS court created that eventually it only services McLennan County now. It used to service 2 counties. Mm-hmm. And we added a specialty court that had 3 dockets on it, started by Judge Hodges, and now Rob Swanton is over that. And they help treat veterans, mental health, and drug court issues so that you can get those more complex cases that take longer treatment and are better treated outside the jail system with counseling and other types of treatment. It saves the taxpayers money. It helps the people stay employed and not sit in jail.
Yes.
And it relieves the dockets of your district courts and your county courts so they can actually do hearings and other trials and cases, while the associate judge acts more like a magistrate overseeing those cases while they're getting counseling and treatment. So all of that to say, we grew the pipeline by 50% capacity, and we only added 1 employee to a staff of 26.
Isn't that something?
Yeah.
Efficiencies is so important. And, government doesn't seem to think about efficiencies on very many things, unless you have a good, strong Republican in those seats. Like you said, most of the time they think about expanding the cost because they say, oh, look, it's costing twice as much, and look how much services I'm giving. Well, the problem is people don't think about what services a district court gives because it's such a unique thing, because it's not just making sure everything's filed. It's not just the courts. It's not just making sure that you have jurors for these courts. It's kind of like a juggling act that you're trying to make sure none of those balls fall.
It's kind of like most people in the modern age don't know how their car engine works. They know how to put the key in and turn it on.
Yep.
And when it doesn't work, they know that it doesn't work. And that's how a good clerk's office should be. You won't even notice that it's running well when it's running well, because it's just how it's supposed to be. And we were able to crank up the efficiency, crank up the speed at which cases were disposed of. And coming out of COVID, we were one of the fastest courts to recover from COVID backlogs and tackling those cases that had been sitting while the Austin told us we couldn't have trials.
Yes.
And so trials are kind of like the lubrication in a court system that keeps the engine running without the gears clanking.
Correct.
And when you take that away, if someone's accused of a crime, they have no incentive to plea unless they're going to get probation. Then they can go ahead and get their probation over with. Mm-hmm. If there's any chance that they're not going to get probation and that's not on the table, they're going to just sit it out on bail and wait for a trial date.
Yeah.
And then when you get to the civil and family law, if they're at loggerheads, there's no pressure to make them settle the cases, because you're at a very anemic rate during that time to try and move things along. And so it was fortunate that we'd added another court right as we're coming out of that. And we'd added those specialty courts to kind of relieve some of those pressures.
That's fabulous. And, like you said, specialty situation, it's hard. These judges have a very difficult job because there's so many different things come through their courts. And there's some of them that have been gearing up for their whole life for one area or another. And my heart just goes out to them that they have to suddenly become an expert on whatever's coming into their court. And of course, you help manage that to help. Also, I know that you've worked with, like you said, Doc and Brian, our old state rep and our Senate rep. What's Brian doing now? Something really fabulous.
He's still hanging out in the state Senate, and he's awaiting confirmation from the U.S. Senate to be the next assistant secretary. It's still a little trouble for Department of War. Call it again. So
right under Pete Hegseth, isn't it, or something to that?
I believe there's a Hegseth, one other person, and then there's 5 assistant secretaries, and he'll be one of those 5.
But can you imagine one of our local guys is doing something that important? And, that kind of goes to show how important this state Senate seat is, how we've had good, high-quality people in the past. And if I remember correctly, didn't I hear that Brian asked you to run to replace him?
So we met a year and a half ago, and he asked me to consider running when he didn't run, because he said, we need someone of your caliber in this office behind me. And that was kind of the nature of that conversation. He's in a tricky spot because he's before a Senate nominations committee, so he's not doing anything politically this cycle.
Makes sense.
Yeah.
You endorse somebody that did a great job in McLennan County type stuff. Yeah, I understand, because the Democrats will pull up anything.
Yeah, they're giving him a good twice over. I think he called it a proctological exam. So
I believe it. Well, I was looking at one of your cards here, and there's some pretty good names here. Doc Anderson. Let me get it in the right place. Boy, is he a great guy. And of course, he endorsed you, and Bill Flores did a great job for us for, was it a decade or 2 decades? It seemed like it was a while. But
2010 to 20.
A decade.
20 or 2, so 10 or 12 years.
Yeah. And then, of course, Ted Nugent, which we're glad to have him around.
There's red meat issues there. For Waco, with Doc Anderson, his Custer's last stand moment was in the 23 session over water.
Oh, yeah.
A couple decades ago, we had the issue with a nice wall of bovine excrement coming down from the river. Yeah. And it got to be where Lake Waco wasn't safe to swim in some parts of the year.
Or sometimes concerned about drinking.
Yeah. And we were having to buy extra filtration, all this other stuff. So the law was shifted to give us a little bit more protection on that watershed. It was considered imperiled. And it's probably, we've got just a little bit more regulation than what we need. but it helped us, the water, to clean up in less than 20 years. We've got a safe lake. We've got decent water. It doesn't taste bad anymore. It doesn't have the odor, and it's safe to swim in. And in 23, one of my opponents ganged up on Doc Anderson to try and remove all those protections at once. And that would have been a problem. The city of Waco sounded the alarm and said, help, trouble. And if it hadn't have been for Senator Birdwell, that would have been state law.
The other issue with our water, or Lake Waco, people don't realize it's not just the water for Lake Waco. Not just even for McLennan County. There's probably 300,000 people get water out of Lake Waco.
That's right. You're in city council for Woodway, blended in Waco water.
Yes.
I'm pretty sure Hewitt does at this point. Most of our suburbs around Waco are somewhat dependent on Waco for some of their water.
Correct. And it's amazing how many places it goes. Well, that kind of covers our 1 and 2. Number 3 is this campaign. And of course, we talked a little bit about one of your opponents, some of the things. It doesn't sound like there's been too much mudslinging. There has been, I just wanted to point out, I don't know if any people has received this, but this link letter, which is a, kind of cool instrument, but I want people to understand that when you...
It's a nice retirement plan for Terry Lowry. He makes a few $1,000,000 a year off
a year. A
cycle every 2 years.
Yeah, well, yeah. But, if you're making $3 million every 2 years. But what I want to mention about it is it's $11,000 to get your name highlighted.
Minimum.
Yeah.
Minimum.
Yeah, you might be more because you have multiple counties.
I understand that multiple statewide people paid him over $300,000.
Wow.
Now, and that's where the millions came from. I personally started calling him last fall and called him, texted him, emailed him for 3 months, and he never returned my phone call or email after committing to multiple other parties that he would allow me to be in the link letter and that he would consider me.
Mm-hmm.
He's kind of shifty, I guess, and he's kind of hard to pin down, but ultimately some forces on high put their thumbs on the scale, and he never called me back. And people need to look at the candidates. Some of them are good. Some of his recommendations are what we'd agree with.
Yes.
But some of them you're going to wonder and scratch your head what happened. And, it's just a system that some people are calling pay to play that's probably not the best system for a voter guide.
Well, and that's my point. If you tear this out and you take it in, which you can take it in, but if you do, scratch out that and go ahead and circle Jon Gimble's down here on the bottom. Or another thing you can do, which I highly recommend, you can print this off from the county. You do have to adjust it for the size, but that way it gives you exactly who's on it and how it works. Now, I'm going to be posting this on my Facebook page later. So if you want to print it off of my Facebook page, that's another thing that you can do. And of course, I have a few people marked, like in the situation in this race. I'm trying to remember where yours is. I think
you didn't charge me $300,000.
You're going to buy me lunchtime sometime. But down here on the second page towards the bottom, that one will be a good one to make sure you get the vote in. Another thing we might want to talk about is other actual endorsements.
Sure.
One of course, you got a lot of endorsements of people and everybody I know that knows you is supporting you, which says a lot about you. David Cook, you have 2 other opponents, but David Cook is stronger. Mm-hmm. I met him several times. He's a good guy. There's nothing, you can't say, bad, anything bad. I can't say that. Yeah. But I want to mention about the Trump endorsement of David Cook. During the school choice time, if I understand it correctly, everyone that supported school choice for Greg Abbott got an endorsement from President Trump. And in this situation, I think it's a little, I don't know if Trump said, yes, I'm going to endorse you for Senate or not, but at the time he was in the State House. So it almost sounds like he got an endorsement from Trump for the state house, and he's using it for the Senate. I could be wrong, but that's what it kind of sounds like.
I believe our lieutenant governor asked for the endorsement for both David Cook and Lee Wamsgons up in Fort Worth, but it's funny when, not funny in a good way, but when Lee Wamsgons lost the special election runoff last month, Trump acted like he didn't know anything about it.
Yes.
So I don't know that I don't know that he interviewed David Cook. I believe the channel was our lieutenant governor asking for that favor for him. And there was kind of an interesting little scenario where David Cook was given a win-win scenario, run for speaker last session against what was going to be a fairly liberal speaker, Dave Phelan, that a lot of the grassroots conservatives were upset with. And if you lose, whenever Birdwell retires, you'll be anointed the next senator.
Yeah.
And I mean, everybody's free to weigh in with their own free speech, but traditionally, Senate districts have picked their own senators that represents their area, their values. And it's not that there's a misalignment between our state leaders in this Senate district on values, but geographically, this is a central Texas district. 85% of the primary is not in the DFW in Dallas or Fort Worth, Tarrant County.
I was going to ask you about that because I was looking at and I should have printed out the picture of the district. And of course, how many different counties of the big full blocks is there? I mean,
10 whole and 2 parcel. And if you imagine a triangle starting in Eastland, that comes down through McLennan County, adds in Falls County to our southeast with Marlin, and then from McLennan goes up to Ellis through Hill. In between there, you've got Bosque, Hamilton, Comanche, Somerville, Erath, and Hood counties. And then you've got kind of a little sliver going up into Tarrant County.
Very small. That was my point that I was going to make is, of course, McLean County is not rural, but a lot of other rural counties, and then that small sliver to try to make sure that you get some of Tarrant to split it up to make that red. Now,
county leadership's a member of the Rural County Alliance and the Urban County Alliance because we're kind of a suburban one. Ellis is kind of similar, and so is Hood. But those other 7 counties are very rural. Most of them have less than 50,000 people in them.
Yes.
And, one of the things that came up in that water issue 2 decades ago was there's a lot of dairies up there. There's a lot of agriculture. And that's Texas started out as an agrarian-based society. And as Texas has grown and brought in business and industry, over time we've lost the rural perspective. And over the last 40 years, we've lost several rural voices in our state Senate. And I sincerely believe that if Mr. Cook wins this will become a DFW Senate seat. And this will be the last at-bat that we get for an open race to have a state senator from this region.
That's very important because before Brian, we seemed like we used to have a local senator for many years. And Brian didn't do a bad job, but we all love him. And he did his best.
He was great.
Yeah, he did his best to come down a lot. And of course, like we said, worked with you.
I think the amazing thing about Brian was he wasn't the Hood County senator, even though that's where he was from. He was the Central Texas senator.
Yes.
He made sure that when he made a decision, it didn't pit one part of the district against the other, and it was best for the whole district. And usually he was also trying to look out for the whole state. And we need someone like that that's not going to play regional politics. And the fact that we had that for my main opponent less than 2 years ago, I just don't believe that we can put our faith and trust in someone that's willing to fritter away without any input from our community the protections that we have on our water supply.
Yes. Who knows if this is a rumor or what, but I also heard that he's wanting to use this as a stepping stone to go to the federal to become a congressman. You know,
official who said, you don't need to run against David. He's just going to use it to get a congressional seat, and then you can run for something else. And I said, well, we need a senator in the meantime.
Yes.
And we don't need a gap in representation.
Yes, I agree. Well, I think we pretty well covered the things that I had on my list. Tell me, is there anything we're missing that we should be talking about?
Well, the hot topics that I've been hearing across the 12 counties are this proliferation of data centers.
Yes.
It's not hitting Woodway where you're on city council, but up north of Waco, there's several that are looking at coming in. Hill County has several that are trying to get in. Bosque County has one right on the Hill County border. Hood County's been overrun practically, it looks like, with requests. They've got 6 or 7 trying to come in. And I had met with some people from a data center a year ago, and they were looking at putting in a MUD, which would let them just do whatever they wanted without input. And I said, you need some partnership.
Yeah.
You need to partner with a city. You need to become a community member. And you need to, here's the thing that a lot of people don't realize. There is not a local official that can stop these from coming in.
No, it's a state
and
issue.
From on top, our president and our governor are saying, we want all these in the U.S., and our governor is saying we want all these in Texas. There's no state law to stop them.
Yeah.
I was the first candidate to ask that we have a special session so that we could deal with it this summer. Senator Birdwell's set to be confirmed. The committee vote is later this week on Thursday. And then usually it's about a month lag and he'll get confirmed. We'll have a special election to replace him. We could have a special session this summer and have some meaningful reform where we give county commissioners the authority to say no to projects they don't want in their county. Right now, Hood County has that option, but none of the other counties in our district do. They have a special carve-out in state law.
There's also something that's on our ballot in the proposition about should we be exporting water. This is, a lot of people think we should vote yes on every one of the ballots. I want people to think about that because water is such an important issue, and sometimes we can't get enough water in a certain area. Data center will make a difference on that. So, in this situation, we might want to put no on that one because of some of them are talking about self-contained watering systems. Well, they could possibly take a place where there's abundance of water to prevent.
Even the self-contained ones, from what I've read and heard, they still lose a few percentage points per day from evaporation through the cooling methods. But the numbers that are getting thrown around by people that they use tens of millions per day, those are for either open loop systems or the initial fill of the system. The closed loop systems, I understand that even on a big one, like the one proposed up near Lacey Lakeview, they're talking about an Olympic swimming pool a day, something like that, which if you had housing across all of that, it would use about the same amount of water. So, it's not nothing, but it is a use of resources. And I think one thing we as Texans should have is the self-determination at the local level. Do we want this in our backyard? And if the county commissioners are willing to do that, then they'll be accountable to the voters for that decision. And if they're not, they'll be accountable for that decision.
And if we have a choice through a vote, those data centers will have to do a better job of selling the community on why they should be here. Right now, these communities feel like we're just being overwhelmed. They're going to make a lot of noise. It's going to hurt our energy consumption. Right now, energy is one of the highest prices in years and years. And of course, that's something I'm sure you're going to want to work on. Kind of like property
One of the issues on energy consumption is we had all these Obama and Biden subsidies into wind and solar.
Yeah.
They've now expired. We're not renewing them. But here's the negative side of what that did. We didn't have a lot of generation from the fossil fuel side created. We actually had a lot go offline.
Correct.
Texas has the #1 solar and I believe the #1 wind in the U.S. When it's online. But what happens when the sun's not shining and the wind's not blowing?
Yes.
We still want to be in our air-conditioned rooms, and we still want the lights to come on. And if managed properly with regulation, we could force the data centers to actually bring their own power to the table.
That would be important. because
so they're not a net drain.
And what I understand, A&M's doing a lot with micro atomic, nuclear, and it sounds like that's going to be our saving grace in a matter of years. Has to be safe, but that's going to be.
It may save our water issue too, because you can use that. It's more affordable to do desalination with that as well.
Correct.
And that's one of the issues with the Brazos River water, that some areas along the Brazos River have rights to that water. Waco has some, but it's a little salty. So you either have to blend it in with other water or desalinate it, because you need it to be not as salty. So nuclear technology makes that a little bit more affordable.
People don't realize the Brazos River Authority often on Lake Waco will have the gates open even when we're in a drought area, because Dow Chemical has to have water down at the coast. And you just go, why are the gates open? Why are we doing it? And there's, there's the problem, and then there's 6 other issues that deals with the problem. Also, I guess we probably ought to talk about property tax, because that's one of the...
That was the next thing I wanted to bring up.
Yeah.
It read my mind.
Yeah. Well, property tax is such a difficult thing on so many ways. We've talked about it many times. The elderly, once their house is paid off, then they're paying the same as what they was in property tax and house payments in property tax. And of course, some of that's
happening across the state.
Yes, and some of that is the explosive cost of education in schools that I think we can do better. I wanted to point out something. I printed out the Democrat ballot on their proposition. And one of their propositions is Texas should fund all public schools at the same per pupil rate as the national average. Now, I just want to, we can have a little fun with Democrats here.
Mm-hmm.
It's easy to Google this stuff.
Yeah.
The average cost per pupil is $15,633. Texas is paying $16,792. I wonder if Democrats really want us to cut school funding by over $1,000 per pupil. I bet you if they realized that, they wouldn't have that on there.
Well, and they like to play games with those numbers. And the what happens there in that particular one, they're looking at state funding and not counting the money that passes through the state from the federal government as a block grant. So the number you had was total state and federal dollars. The state gets to allocate those dollars.
Yeah.
So the schools don't automatically get the federal funds. It comes through the state to the schools. And ultimately, the state can write the rules to whatever they want to be for the schools, because the Constitution provides that the state shall provide an adequate education for the children in the state of Texas. So it's a constitutional requirement that we have public schools. That constitutional requirement also requires that you don't charge a tuition. It has to be at no tuition cost. So then we get back into property taxes, which have become terribly unpopular. You're talking about explosive costs. A lot of people in the last 10, 20 years have seen their property taxes grow at way higher than the rate of inflation, higher than the rate of growth of the population inflation.
I did a YouTube video on the high cost of housing, and I bought a house in 1980, and the property tax on that house was $230 a year. Now it's $4,900 a year. So, what's the multiple on that, and what's the inflation compared to everything else? And it's
20x.
It's a multiple. And of course, here's one of the other things that some of the other viewers going to know is we have many school districts in Texas where the superintendent is making more than the President of the United States. And what I mean by many, we're talking about probably 30. Now, the President of the United States has, 4.5 million employees he's responsible for. And the largest school district.
Most of them are making more than the governor.
Yes, correct. Oh, that was another thing. When we go down to the city council, even in a city of 10,000 people, I know of one, I don't want to mention it, that the city manager is making $60,000 more than the governor of Texas. Now, he's getting to work 4.5 days a week, has 100 employees, and I forgot what the governor has, but I want to say like 340 employees. I mean, 340,000 employees. We need some guidelines.
Crazy, the games that we've gotten into, and I worked alongside Andy Harwell for about 11 years. He's the county clerk here in McClellan County. And when he told me this story, I guess a few years after I got in, and it wasn't complaining about our salaries, it was just pointing out the growth of administrative salaries in the school system. When he started, the superintendent of Robinson, Lorena, and several of these other schools had about the same salary as your countywide elected clerks and treasurer. The treasurer and the clerks have had the same salary for years. The salary for the superintendents is about 2 to 3 times the salary of the clerks now, and the clerks are making decent money. They were paying me $128,000 a year to do a job, and we don't get any official time off. But as long as the office is running well, you can take a vacation and nobody complains. But yeah, we've had an administrative creep, and some of it's born of state regulations and federal regulations. This is something that's come up, kind of dovetails into property taxes going up. State mandates, an unfunded mandate. Essentially, local government is an unfunded mandate. You're mandated by the state to have a county government, which includes a sheriff, a DA, a county commissioner's court. The state doesn't send the salaries for any of those. They say, you shall do this, and here's how you can pay for it. The same for cities. You have some flexibility, and you can charge us local sales tax or not. The rest of it's usually property taxes. There's not that many revenue streams for a city or a county, but you have some options. And the local governments are the most creative, innovative things we have around, and the state government can learn a lot from it. The best that I saw county government functioning was when all of the parts of the system were collaborating and seeing what would work best for the system versus, well, this is my office and I'm going to make sure that it runs the best it can, even if it makes yours inefficient.
Yes.
And that's one reason why over 11 years we only had to add one employee, because I collaborated with all of the judges, the commissioner's court, the sheriff's office, everybody that interfaced with our office, the constables, to try and make our office work as well as it could with their office, so that they didn't have burdens on top of whatever else they were doing. If we could do that between the state and the local government instead of scapegoating each other, I've often heard locals complain about unfunded mandates while the state's complaining about the locals' out of control spending. Well, that's a related problem. The more you mandate that the locals have to do, the more they're going to have to spend.
Someone I used to work with, when we'd complain about the bloated cost of one department or another, he had this saying that was so spot on: many hands makes light work. Often managers want to have no work, so they have plenty of hands to do it. And that's exactly what it was. They would say, oh, I need more for this, this, and this. And the next thing you know, that manager is just pushing a pencil and kind of just, oh, I'm managing this. And, instead of actually trying to make it work. I think that what I've said this to others, I think city councils and school boards need guidelines for what the employment size for, either students or population. Not necessarily have to stick to it, but guidelines, and also guidelines on so far as what some of the people should make. Now, I came from an industry that you pay the top guy pretty good, and you pay everybody else pretty low, because it was that top guy's job to make sure to train them good, make them comfortable, make sure they work well, and keep it smooth. You look at something, I remember reading a book about what Starbucks coffee, and they say, you think about it, you're paying someone not much money to sell something that doesn't cost very much that you just put together, but you sell for a high price. How do you do it? And of course, it's selling that employee on how to do it, how to be comfortable, have the shield, and try to make sure you don't have the turnover that some businesses have. Governments never think about that. Just give more money. Just more money. Don't worry about it. And, I've seen situations where small cities pay much higher than a large city and not have to work as hard. So that's guidelines.
There's struggles there. And going back to the original topic of property taxes, the thing that I came out with soon after announcing was we should refocus our surpluses for the state budget from all these kind of pet projects that have been very useful, putting more money into highways, putting more money into water infrastructure. These are great things, but we need to spend 2 or 3 sessions to prioritize buying out the M&O property tax rate, basically eliminating it locally and replacing it with state dollars.
As M&O is maintenance and operation.
That's right.
People sometimes say M&O, is that kind of like M&M?
Yeah, or they think it's a railroad, maybe.
Yeah.
But it's shorthand for maintenance and operations.
Yes.
There's 2 components for all your local property taxes. INS is bonds that we voted on.
Yep.
And that creates debt. And not all debt is bad, but there's a lot of times we add debt that it adds costs to the project.
Well, we need people also to understand what a bond is, because we've seen that before. Renters say, I don't pay property tax. Well, they do. And some of them.
That's a good example of a debt project that we could have taken on, but we passed on when we were first looking at it. I was new as a clerk, and it was the 16-17 time frame, and there was kind of a round of discussions about doing a justice center out of the old jail. And we got a quote from one architect, or I think it was actually pre-architect, it was just the engineer, and he said, roughly, you're going to spend $21 million to retrofit this building, and I'm kind of ballparking numbers here because it was a 10-year-old conversation.
Sure.
And you might get 35,000 square feet out of it. Or you can demolition the whole building and spend $25 million and get 70,000 square feet.
That difference.
And so we were like, wow, that would actually do the next 50 years of McLennan County government right there. But we had a number of other projects come up, and this got kind of pushed back for a little while until we actually had a kind of hot demand when we created those new courts coming out of COVID. The commissioners jumped on it, and now you're looking at a $60 to $70 million project. So if you'd bought the debt on the higher project, and let's say it was even more expensive, it was $25 million, when you add in the interest of paying off the bond, you probably would have been in the $40 million range over the life of that product because interest rates were really low.
Sure.
Now we've got some COVID money in there paying for it. They're having to borrow money at a higher rate or just pay out of property tax money. And the total project's going to end up being a retrofit at closer to that original square footage amount, not the double amount. It's going to be a little bigger because they've added some to it.
Yeah.
But it's a much higher price tag. And that's kind of an example of there is a value if you have a dire need for square footage.
Yes.
Yeah. To borrow money at a low interest rate when interest rates are low, you actually can save money there because waiting over time as inflation ticks up, the process and the product's going to cost more.
Correct.
But that's kind of, the governor's come out with a very similar plan. It has some other steps where properties are only appraised every 3 years and some other things like that are all great reforms. But if we can eliminate the maintenance and operation property tax, that the big carrot there is that does away with the Robin Hood school tax problem. And that's been something we've been struggling with since John Cornyn wrote the opinion in the early 90s as the Chief Justice for the Texas Supreme Court.
Isn't that something?
And it's trying to create an equitable system, but no matter how well they try and craft it, socialism doesn't work.
Yeah.
And it creates other inequities. And we've been living under those other inequities for 30, 40 years now.
I've thought, which I haven't heard anybody say this before, but the average property value in the state of Texas is $361,000. And I've often, and of course, we've got a tax exemption on schools now for what, $140,000 or somewhere.
I think if you're under 65, it's 140, and then if you're my parents' age, it's 200,000.
I'm in I'm in the over 65 group.
Yeah.
But my point is I'd like to see the over 65 group go up to that average 361,000. The reason I say that is half the value, or half the people that have the value, would suddenly have no property tax, at least on the school part.
Yeah.
And, then you can fight it out at the other levels. But that would be, that's 57% of your property tax. And that would take care of especially the poor over 65, where they're not struggling to pay their property tax.
Well, I'm not for that for one reason. I love over 65 people. I love my parents, but we need to spread the cut across everybody. The average home buying age is now over 40.
Yes,
it is. The biggest part of the increase, besides interest, is property taxes.
25% of your rent or your house payment will be in property tax and insurance. And that's, that was that podcast that I was talking about was, if you want to fix it.
And so if we start favoring one age group over another, we're picking winners and losers. And I'm kind of an old school Milton Friedman guy, where when we do a tax cut, it should apply to everybody.
I understand what you're saying. The main reason.
That's just kind of, I don't get to pick everything, but
true.
We've got to work on the affordability for our younger generation too, so they can afford to buy their first house. It used to be that you bought your first house in your 20s. Now we're in our early 40s.
Oh, I agree. Well, when I was doing that podcast, I was talking about the rate of inflation from 1960 to now on the property itself is, they're getting at an incredible rate. When I started buying my rent houses, I was paying $10,000 a piece for these. Now they're worth $200,000. So people might go, "Oh, you were smart." No, I wasn't smart. I should have bought 10 more. But the main thing was, you take the inflation from that time to now. It should be closer to 50,000 or 60,000, and they're 4 times that. There's multiple reasons for that. That's a problem at the federal level, not at the state level. But one of the things we're seeing at the state level property tax issue is the elderly having trouble paying. So that's the reason I mentioned that. It does do exactly what you said. It diverts money into the people that have property over the average, number one, and also the younger people. But that's where we need to do a better job on the actual expenses of schools and cities. And that's a whole another issue. Like I said, guidelines will probably be a big help, because too many times on city councils and school boards, people have not been like you of actually had to meet a payroll before.
Yeah.
And it's so easy to go, "Oh yeah, this person sounds like they're worth $210,000. And when you tell them, "Hey, the governor only makes $153,000, they just act like, "Well, he's got so much more, it doesn't matter." So it's hard whenever you think those dollars comes out of our constituents. So,
well, and in the last 3 sessions, which is the same time period that my opponent's been in the state government, the state budget's grown by 44, 48%. I've seen conflicting numbers. So we've crammed a lot of spending in at the state level.
True.
And if we had prioritized buying down the M&O property tax, it could have been eliminated by now. And then we wouldn't have to play, well, we want to do seniors or we want to do young people or this. if we just can flat eliminate it, then nobody has to worry about it.
Flat eliminate school tax. Like I said,
well, you'd still have the INS thing that locals could choose to vote on.
Sure, but bonds.
Yes.
Yeah. So if you voted for a bond, you're going to be taxed on it. That's it.
It's hard to get in from under it. It's kind of like a student loan.
Yeah. Well, and can you imagine that if people actually could see that they're voting on something that will make a difference on what they're having to pay on, instead of it just being all blended in. And I mean, I've seen some advertisements for bonds saying, vote on this and it'll lower your property tax. And it just doesn't make sense. But, it's difficult. Well, is there anything else we need to cover?
Those are kind of the top issues. I get all kinds of fun little regulatory things. And, talking about how would your senator vote for you is great to figure out who they are.
Yes.
But 75% of the time, a senator is working for you outside of a legislative session.
Oh, yeah.
What does that look like? They're helping you with state agencies. The only thing worse than an elected bureaucrat like a district clerk is an unelected one.
Sure.
And your elected official, a state rep's a great voice, but there's only 31 state senators. And if a state senator is upset about something, it can really mess up things at an agency.
Yes.
And so when a state senator calls on behalf of a constituent and voices a concern about how something isn't working properly or correctly, it's funny how quick that agency jumps to. And I've helped people in our county and surrounding counties get in touch and get plugged in through Birdwell's office and with state agencies directly. And that kind of ombudsman role, dealing directly with state agencies on behalf of your constituents, that's the day job for a legislator, day in and day out. 75% of the time, you're dealing with that because our legislature only meets for half a year every other year.
I was going to say, 140 days
a little less than half a year.
Yeah.
Roughly half a year, every other year.
But like you said, you've got an office that people are calling you, needing help. And to give a little more to that, this was a federal issue, but my poor 92-year-old mother was getting billed for health insurance through mail handlers or some federal thing that she didn't know about. And I was looking at her bank statement going, what is this $300 a month? I don't know. I've got this. Have you tried to cancel? They won't. Or then I called, and of course you couldn't get through to anybody. Pete Sessions, you call his office. Here's how you fill it out. I'm on it. Don't worry about a thing. Funny, I hadn't been billed anymore. So, but that's a prime example of a need and having the right people. Same thing happens at other levels that we don't see. City council and school boards, you should be your liaison for that. And anyway, it's important. So, John, I think we're pretty well.
And that's where having somebody local that cares about the issues that align with your region comes into play.
Yes, somebody right here in McLennan County.
Yes, sir. And for the surrounding counties, if they're listening, we need someone that's going to listen to all the counties and help them all out.
Yes. Not someone that, is 100 miles away. I don't know where he'd have his office, but still, I think Tarrant County has, 4 senators already out of there. So do we really need another one there? We need one.
This is our only chance.
Correct.
Yeah.
Well, let's go over where they can vote. That's an important thing. We've got 5 early voting sites. The number one site that has the most people going to it is the First Assembly of God, 6700 Bosque Avenue, if you're in McLennan County. Now, those other counties, I'm sure you can look and find those pretty easy. Hewitt's number 2, that's at 200 Patriot Court. I
voted there today.
There you go. If you know where, if you're Hewitt or around, you'll know where it is. It's a little off the main
It's City Hall there, basically.
It's City Hall, correct. Robinson, the same way. It's in the Robinson Community Center at 106 Lindell Avenue. If you're If you're from Robinson, you'll know where it is, but it's behind a convenience store, oddly enough, a metal building. But it's been working great for years. McLennan County Election Office. Now that's on the opposite side where most people go in. It's kind of downstairs a little bit.
The basement.
The basement, but it's fairly small. But if you work downtown, it's great. Also, the multi-purpose community center on Elm. The timing today through Friday is 8 to 5. Saturday, you can vote on Saturday. People say they don't have time. 7 a.m. to 7 p.m. Sunday. I mean, can you imagine voting on Sunday? Anyway, after church, 1 p.m. to 7 p.m. on Sunday. Next week, Monday through Friday, 7 a.m. to 7 p.m. So they really got you covered. On election day, I think there's 47 different locations. You're going to see it everywhere. If you're in Woodway, of course, the Woodway City Hall, I'll probably be there. And March 3rd, 7 a.m. to 5 p.m. So voter apathy is a killer. The reason most people say they don't vote is because they don't know the candidates. This was a great point to be able to actually get to know who we hope will be your next state senator. The other thing that kills us is presidential elections. You have advertising. Everybody knows to go vote. This is a midterm.
Yeah.
Primaries, you get less votes, and then this is a midterm primary, so you even get less votes. So here's what I'm asking. Talk to your neighbors. Bring them with you. If you have elderly, please get them and bring them with you. If you know people in rest homes, go get them and bring them with you. Here's the other thing. This is easy to print out. The only thing you have to do is adjust your printer to get this. But whenever you take somebody, print these out and make copies and mark down, they might not have watched this and they might not understand. And they'll say, who do you vote? Who should I vote for? We'll help them. Yeah. And then just hand them. And you can take this in. Now, some people might say, oh, I'm going to put it on my phone. That's a no-no.
Doesn't work.
You cannot take your phone in there and open it up. So this is the way to do it. Some people tear this out and carry this, and that's fine, but just make sure you mark through the names you don't want to vote for and take a big pen and mark the ones you like, because
there's a lot of good choices on there, but in my race, the guy just didn't want to talk to somebody that wasn't from the Metroplex.
Yeah. Well, so, money talks,
It does. The other thing is it's going to be easier to vote during early voting than on election day because there's always higher turnout on that one day than any of the other days. And generally speaking, the downtown location doesn't usually have a wait. When I voted out in Hewitt, there were 3 people in front of us in line, and so it wasn't really a wait at all. But you're going to have the after 5 times next week that'll probably be pretty busy as people are off work. So if you can take your lunch hour to do it or something like that, you're going to have less of a hassle.
I went today just to see some of the other people. And of course, you had someone at the Assembly of God, an excellent person there, and could tell. That's the other good thing is if you find somebody there, talk to them, because they'll really explain, especially if you support them already, why, reinforce why you should vote for them. But it wasn't that many people there. So please come out and vote. We don't want to see what happened. We wouldn't in this situation, but we don't want to see what happened in Fort Worth where a Democrat won a red district. And the reverse can happen here. A weaker person can win to represent the Republicans. We need strong people. We've got to win these races because you've seen it.
I'm the only race that's taken out an incumbent Democrat in their whole electoral history.
There you go. Well, and also an important thing is Texas, we're doing very good. But at one time Minnesota wasn't what it is, and Minnesota only has that many more Democrats. But that many more Democrats winning turns it, I don't want to say what it turns it to because you know what I'm about to say. But my point is they silence every single Republican. We don't silence them. There was a couple of things on their ballot that I'll probably talk about it sometime and going, it's not a bad idea, so it was just like school, and I thought it was funny that they, so anyway, we'll work with anybody, but we got to have your vote. That's the most important. So
absolutely.
Thank
y'all.
Thank Jon for coming to the show and talking so we can get to know you better. And folks that's watching, thank you for watching. We'll have some more of these interviews, and we'll talk more, try to be more like Rush Limbaugh if we can. So anyway, we appreciate you, and we'll talk to you later. Thank you very much.
Thank you, sir.